The message flashed on my phone screen like a slap to the face. A party 500 due first of month. Venmo preferred. From my own son. In my own home. The house I'd paid off 20 years ago. The house where I'd raised him after his mother died. My arthritis-twisted fingers hovered over the screen, wondering when family became a business transaction. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name's Harold Mitchell. I'm 72 years old and used to live, in a modest 3-bedroom house in Danville, Pennsylvania. Nothing fancy, mind you, just a place I called home for 43 years. Retirement suits me fine most days. I wake up around 6, make my coffee the old-fashioned way, percolator, not those fancy pod machines. The neighborhood's quiet, mostly older folks like me who've been here since Nixon was president. My routine's simple. Coffee on the porch when weather permits, watching cardinals at the feeder I built last spring. I take walks to keep my joints from freezing up completely. Sometimes I meet Frank and the boys at the diner for breakfast on Wednesdays. We talk about everything and nothing. Baseball, our aches and pains, grandkids, the weather. Normal stuff. Old man stuff. My wife Margaret died 12 years ago. Breast cancer. Too young at 58. Some days I still reach across the bed in the morning before remembering she's not there. After she passed, the house felt too big, too quiet. But it was home. Every scratch on the hardwood, every chip in the kitchen counter told our story. Our son David was 16 when his mother died. That's a terrible age to lose your mom. I did my best raising him alone, though I made plenty of mistakes. I was stricter than Margaret would have been. Maybe that's where things went wrong. Maybe I should have been softer, more understanding. Hindsight's always clearer, isn't it? I worked at the steel mill for 35 years. Dangerous work, but it paid the bills and put David through college. First person in our family to get a degree. I was so proud watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown. Margaret would have been bursting with pride. I put away as much as I could for retirement, but medical bills ate through our savings faster than termites through pine. Margaret's treatment wasn't cheap, even with insurance. When David graduated, he struggled to find good work. The economy wasn't kind to new grads back then. So when he asked to move back home at 24, I didn't hesitate. Stay as long as you need, I told him. Save your money. That was 8 years ago. He landed a decent job at an insurance company 3 years back. Started dating Melissa around the same time. Nice enough girl, but ambitious. Always talking about their 5-year plan, their investment strategy, their future home in the suburbs. Nothing wrong with ambition, but something in her eyes when she looked at our modest house made me uneasy. Like she was calculating what could be improved, upgraded, monetized. Last Christmas, David announced they were engaged. I was happy for him, truly. I gave him his mother's engagement ring to give to Melissa. It wasn't fancy or large, but it had sentimental value. Melissa smiled when she showed it to me, but I caught her later looking at bigger diamonds online. You deserve better than this starter ring, she told David, not realizing I was in the hallway. We'll upgrade after the wedding. That stung. Margaret's ring was starter now. Just another thing to be improved upon. Spring came, and they were still living with me. David mentioned renovating the spare bedroom for their home office. I agreed, even helped with the painting. Then they redid the kitchen, my kitchen, without really asking. Just came home one day to find my old oak cabinets gone, replaced with something white and shiny that didn't hold nearly as much. It increases the home value, David explained, not meeting my eyes. Whose home? I wondered but didn't say it aloud. Little by little, I felt like a guest in my own house. They moved my recliner, the one Margaret got me for our 30th anniversary, to the basement because it clashed with the aesthetic. My fishing gear had to be stored in the garage instead of the hall closet. My bird feeders were attracting pests. I started spending more time at the senior center just to get away from my own home. Made some new friends there. Elaine, who teaches watercolor on Thursdays, and Tom, who was a Navy man like my father. Good people who seemed to value what I had to say, unlike at home where I felt increasingly invisible. The real change came when David got promoted in May, assistant regional manager or some such title. Good money from what I gathered. He and Melissa started talking more openly about their future and their house. I tried not to take it personally. Then one evening in June, David and Melissa sat me down at what used to be my kitchen table. They had serious business to discuss. I remember noticing how David kept looking at Melissa before speaking, like he needed permission. "Dad, we've been thinking," he started. "This arrangement, all of us living together, it made sense when I was getting on my feet. But now that I'm established and Melissa and I are planning our future, we need to formalize things." I didn't know what formalize meant, but something cold settled in my stomach. "What David's trying to say," Melissa cut in, "is that we're planning to take over the mortgage." "There is no mortgage," I interrupted. "I paid it off in 2003. "Right," she continued smoothly. "That's even better. We want to buy you out, give you a fair market value for your equity so you can downsize to something more appropriate for your needs, my needs, like I was a problem to be solved." "This is my home," I said simply. David shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, be reasonable. This house is too big for just you. The stairs are getting hard for you to manage. And frankly, Melissa and I need our own space." "Then get your own space," I suggested. "There are plenty of houses for sale." "But we love this neighborhood," Melissa said. "And financially, it makes more sense to invest in a property we already partially own." "Partially own? Since when?" "I've never signed anything giving David ownership," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Well, that's another thing," David said. "I've been living here, contributing to upkeep and improvements that you chose to make without asking," I pointed out, "which gives me certain rights as a co-inhabitant," he finished. I looked between them, these strangers at my table. "Are you threatening legal action against me? Your father?" "Nobody's threatening anything," Melissa soothed, though her eyes remained calculating. "We're simply proposing a business arrangement that benefits everyone. You get a nice nest egg to supplement your Social Security, and we get a home we're already invested in." I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. "I need some time to think." "Of course," David said, looking relieved. "Take all the time you need. But we were hoping to have this settled before the wedding in September." I nodded and retreated to my bedroom, the only space in the house that still felt like mine. Though even there, Melissa had suggested new curtains and bedding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about Margaret. What would she say about our son now? The boy we'd sacrificed for, saved for, loved unconditionally, trying to push me out of my own home. The next morning, David caught me before he left for work. "Dad, about last night. I know it's a lot to process, but it really is the best solution for everyone." "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Great." His relief was palpable. "So we can move forward with the paperwork?" "I didn't say that. I said I understand what you're proposing," his smile faltered. "Well, there is one other option if you're not ready to sell." "What's that?" "You could pay rent. Fair market value would be around $2,500 a month." The room seemed to tilt. "Rent in my own home? It's not just your home anymore, Dad. Melissa and I have put thousands into improvements." "Improvements I never asked for." He sighed like I was being difficult. "Think about it, okay? $2,500 is actually below market for this neighborhood now." After he left, I sat at the kitchen table, the new one they'd bought to replace the oak set Margaret and I had chosen together, and made some calculations. My Social Security came to $1,874 a month. My pension added another $100 to $200. After property taxes, utilities, groceries, and my medications, paying $500 in rent would leave me with less than $500 for everything else. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. This was my home. I'd worked my fingers to the bone to provide for my family. I'd nursed Margaret through her illness right here in this house. I'd raised David here, taught him to ride a bike in that driveway, helped him with homework at that table. And now he wanted to charge me rent. That evening the text message came. $500 due first of month. Venmo preferred, not even a conversation. A text message like I was some tenant behind on payments. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my old friend Richard. A retired attorney who'd helped with my will years back. They can't legally evict you, he confirmed after hearing my story. But they can make your life miserable, and it sounds like they're already doing that. What would you do? I asked him, honestly. I'd teach them a lesson they won't forget. The next day, I visited Sunshine Villa, a senior living community on the other side of town. Not my first choice. I'd always sworn I'd never end up in one of those places, but it was clean, had a small garden area, and most importantly, I could afford it on my fixed income. I signed a 1-year lease that afternoon. When I got home, David and Melissa were discussing wedding plans at the kitchen island. "Oh, Dad," David said, barely looking up. "Did you think about our conversation?" "I did," I said calmly. "I've made a decision." That got their attention. "You're right that this arrangement isn't working anymore. So I'll be moving out next week." Their shock was almost comical. This clearly wasn't in their script. "Moving out?" David repeated. "Where would you go?" "Sunshine Villa. I've already signed the lease. That old folks' home." Melissa looked horrified. "But that's appropriate for my needs," I finished for her, using her own words. "Dad, be reasonable," David started. "We don't want you to leave. We just want to charge me rent in the home I paid for," I finished. "I understand perfectly. It's not like that," he protested, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "It's exactly like that," I said, "and it's okay. You've made your choice, and I've made mine." The next week was tense. They tried various tactics. Guilt. "After all we've done for you." Manipulation. "What will people think?" And finally, concern. "We're worried about you living alone." But my mind was made up. I packed my clothes, my books, Margaret's photo albums, and her ashes. Everything else, furniture, appliances, the china cabinet that had been my mother's, I left behind. On moving day, David hovered anxiously. "Dad, please reconsider. We can work something out." "It's done, David." I handed him an envelope. "This contains my new address and phone number. Also a copy of my will and advance directive. Richard has the originals. Why are you giving me these?" He looked genuinely confused, "Because despite everything, you're still my son. And someday you might need to make decisions for me." His eyes filled with tears then, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in months. "Dad, please." But the moving van had arrived, and it was time to go. Sunshine Villa wasn't bad. My apartment was small but efficient. I set up Margaret's picture on the nightstand and arranged my books on the provided shelving. The staff was kind, and there was a chess club that met on Tuesdays. 3 days after I moved in, the messages started. First, from David, "Dad, please call me." Then, "The water heater broke. Do you remember when it was installed?" Then the property tax bill came. "It's $4,300, is that right?" Then from Melissa, "David is really upset. Can you please call him back?" They kept coming. Questions about the furnace, the roof warranty, the sewer line. Questions about bills and maintenance and repairs. Things they'd never bothered to learn about while living under my roof. By the 4th day, I had 40 messages between them. 40 increasingly desperate pleas for help with the house they'd been so eager to claim. I sat in my new small living room, looking at my phone as another message came through. "Dad, please. We need your help. We didn't realize how much you did for this place." Outside my window, a cardinal landed on the community bird feeder, bright red against the green leaves, just like the ones I used to watch from my porch. I thought about returning David's calls, about bailing him out yet again. Then I remembered the text message. $1,500 due 1st of month. Venmo preferred. I put my phone down, picked up my new library book, and began to read. The cardinal outside my window seemed to nod in approval. They wanted the house. They could have it, and everything that came with it. A week passed at Sunshine Villa. I settled into a routine of sorts. Breakfast in the common dining area, reading in the courtyard garden, chess with Walter on Tuesdays, and a watercolor class I joined on a whim. The place wasn't home, but it was peaceful. My phone continued to buzz with messages from David and Melissa. I read them all but answered none. "Dad, the sump pump is making a strange noise. What should we do?" The garage door opener stopped working. "Is there a trick to it?" We got a notice about tree trimming from the township. Is this something you usually handle? Each message revealed another gap in their knowledge about maintaining the house they'd been so eager to claim. Each one confirmed my suspicion that they'd never bothered to learn anything about the responsibilities that came with home ownership. On the 10th day, I ran into Elaine from my watercolor class in the community lounge. She was arranging fresh flowers in a vase, humming softly to herself. "Those are beautiful," I commented, stopping to admire the bright yellow daffodils. "From my daughter's garden," she said proudly. "She brings me fresh flowers every Sunday." "You're lucky," I said before I could stop myself. Elaine gave me a shrewd look. "Family troubles?" I hesitated, not wanting to burden her with my problems. But something in her kind eyes invited confidence. "My son tried to charge me rent for my own house," I admitted. "The house I paid off decades ago." She didn't seem shocked. Instead, she nodded slowly. "My sister's son did something similar. Moved in to help her after her hip surgery. 6 months later, he'd taken over the master bedroom and was asking her to contribute more to the grocery bill." "What happened?" "She moved in here," Elaine said simply. Best decision she ever made. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for our children is to stop rescuing them from their own choices. Her words stayed with me all day. That evening, I was organizing my small kitchen when my phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call. David's name flashed on the screen. After 10 days of silence, I decided it was time to answer. "Hello, David." "Dad!" His relief was audible. "Thank God, I've been trying to reach you for days." "I know, I've been reading your messages." A pause. "You've been reading them? Why haven't you responded? I figured you wanted the house." "Houses come with responsibilities. Dad, please." His voice had an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. "The basement flooded last night. The insurance company is saying it's because of improper maintenance of the sump pump. They won't cover the damage. I remembered installing that sump pump 15 years ago. I'd shown David how it worked, explained the maintenance it needed. He'd been on his phone the entire time, barely listening. "That's unfortunate," I said. "Unfortunate." "Dad, there's 4 inches of water down there. All our stored things are ruined, including Mum's Christmas decorations. And the repair estimate is over $7,000. The mention of Margaret's decorations stung. Those hand-painted ornaments had been precious to her. Each one held memories. Our first Christmas together, David's birth, family vacations. Now they were waterlogged and ruined because David couldn't be bothered to learn basic home maintenance. "What do you want me to do about it?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Can you help us?" "With the repairs?" The request hung in the air between us. "Or at least tell us what to do. We're drowning here, Dad, literally." I thought about all the times I'd tried to teach him about the house. The patient explanations about the furnace filter, the water heater maintenance, the importance of cleaning the gutters before winter, all met with impatient sighs or distracted nods. "I offered to teach you these things for years, David. I know. And I should have listened. But right now we need help. Please, Dad." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull of parental obligation. The instinct to rush in and fix things for my child, regardless of cost or consequence. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But David, you need to understand something. This house, these problems, they're yours now. Just like you wanted." "That's not fair," he protested. "We never wanted you to leave." "No, you just wanted me to pay you for the privilege of living in my own home." The line went silent for a moment. "It wasn't like that," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. It was exactly like that. "Hunt for and due 1st of month. Venmo preferred, remember?" He didn't respond. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said, and hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Margaret's face, imagining her reaction to those ruined Christmas ornaments. She'd spent years collecting them, painting them, preserving our family memories in delicate glass and ceramic. By morning I'd made a decision. I called David. "I'll come over to look at the basement," I said when he answered. "But I'm not paying for repairs. I'll show you what needs to be done, and you can decide how to handle it." "Thanks, Dad. When can you come?" "This afternoon. Round 2. I hung up feeling both resolved and apprehensive. It would be strange to return to my house as a visitor, but I needed to see for myself what was happening to the home Margaret and I had built together. The taxi dropped me off at the curb just before 2. The house looked the same from the outside, though the lawn needed mowing. The rose bushes Margaret had planted, the ones I'd tended faithfully for 12 years since her death, looked wilted and neglected. David opened the door before I could knock. He looked awful. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same Penn State sweatshirt he'd had since college. Behind him, I glimpsed Melissa on the phone, pacing in the kitchen. "Dad," David said, relief evident in his voice. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, stepping past him into what used to be my home. The living room had been rearranged again. My reading lamp was gone. The built-in bookshelf that once held my history collection now displayed Melissa's decorative plates and candles. "The basement?" I prompted. "Right." David led me to the basement door. "It's bad, Dad," he wasn't exaggerating. The basement stairs descended into several inches of murky water. The smell hit me immediately. Mildew, dampness, and something else. Something rotting. I rolled up my pant legs and carefully made my way down. The water sloshed around my ankles, soaking my shoes. David followed, wincing as the cold water reached his skin. "When did you last check the sump pump?" I asked, making my way to the utility corner. "Check it." "I didn't know you had to check it," I sighed. "Every 3 months minimum." "I told you this." "I guess I forgot. I found the sump pump submerged in its pit." Kneeling in the water, ignoring the protest from my arthritic knees, I examined it. The float switch was stuck, probably from lack of use. An easy fix under normal circumstances. "The pump's fine," I said, standing up with effort.
The switch is stuck.
"But you've got bigger problems now. All this standing water will lead to mold. And these boxes—" I gestured to the cardboard boxes disintegrating in the water along the far wall. Many had Margaret's handwriting on them. Christmas, David, baby clothes. Photo albums, 1980s. David's face fell. Mom's things. I meant to go through those for 12 years. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. I didn't think they'd get ruined. That's the problem, isn't it? You don't think about these things. The house, your mother's possessions, me, we were all just background in your life. Things you assumed would always be there, maintained by someone else. That's not fair, David protested weakly. I waded through the water to the boxes, pulling one open despite knowing what I'd find. Waterlogged photo albums, the images bleeding and distorted. Margaret's careful documentation of our family history dissolving into colorful smears. Something inside me broke, not with anger but with grief. All those memories, preserved so carefully by the woman who'd loved us both, now ruined through neglect. Your mother kept every drawing you ever made, I said quietly. Every school report, every certificate. She believed someday you'd want to share them with your own children. David stood in stunned silence, water lapping at his ankles. She would have given anything for more time with you, I continued. And you couldn't even be bothered to check on a sump pump. Dad, no, I cut him off. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to help you fix your basement. But you need to understand what's been lost here. I made my way back to the stairs, each step releasing a small cascade of water from my sodden pants. First, we need to get a pump to remove the standing water, I said, reverting to practicalities. Then industrial fans to dry everything out. The switch on the sump pump needs to be replaced. And you'll need to check for mold behind the walls. David nodded mutely, following me up the stairs. In the kitchen, Melissa was still on the phone. No, we need someone today, she was saying. I don't care what it costs. This is an emergency. She noticed me and quickly ended her call. Harold, she said coolly. Thanks for coming. The pump switch is stuck, I told her. But the water damage is extensive. Can you fix it? I can tell you how to fix it. But at my age, I shouldn't be wading through a flooded basement. Something flashed in her eyes. Frustration, maybe disappointment that I wouldn't be solving their problem for them. We called a restoration company, she said. They're sending someone this afternoon. It's going to cost thousands. Yes, home repairs often do, I replied. An uncomfortable silence fell. David looked between us, clearly uncertain what to do next. "Would you like some coffee, Dad?" he finally asked. "No, thank you. I should be going." "Already? But you just got here. I came to assess the damage and tell you what needs to be done." "I've done that, but—" David seemed genuinely confused. "Don't you want to stay? Help us figure this out?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. Beneath the tired eyes and the stubble, I could still see traces of the boy who'd followed me around the yard, eager to help with whatever project I was working on. Before video games and peer pressure and college made him too cool for Dad's boring lessons. "David," I said carefully, "do you remember when you were 10 and I tried to teach you how to change the oil in the car?" He frowned. "Vaguely. You got bored after 5 minutes. Said it was stupid to learn when you could just pay someone to do it. Your mother told me not to push you, that not everyone needs to be handy. What's your point?" "My point is that I've been trying to teach you these things your entire life. You weren't interested. Now you have a crisis, and suddenly you want me to solve it. That's not how this works anymore." Melissa made a sound, half sigh, half scoff. "So you're punishing him for not being interested in home repair as a child?" "That seems petty." I turned to her, maintaining my calm. "This isn't about punishment. It's about consequences. Actions have them. So do inactions." "Exactly," she shot back. "And you're in action right now. When your son needs help has consequences too." Her words hit home, but not in the way she intended. She was right. My choices now would have consequences. But what would the consequences be if I rushed in to save them? More of the same. More entitlement. More learned helplessness, more $1,500 rent demands when they decided they needed something else from me. "You're absolutely right, Melissa," I said, "which is why I'm going to respect your status as homeowners and allow you to handle this yourselves." David's face hardened. "So that's it? You're just going to leave us to deal with this mess?" "Yes," I said simply. "Just like you left me to deal with being kicked out of my own home." "We never kicked you out," he protested. "You chose to leave after you demanded rent in my own house that I paid for. We were trying to formalize things." Melissa interjected. "Make it a proper business arrangement." "Family isn't a business arrangement," I said quietly. "At least it shouldn't be." David ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Look, Dad, I admit the rent thing was handled poorly, but we're drowning here literally. Can't you just help us this once?" I looked at my son standing in my kitchen, no, his kitchen now, pleading for rescue. Part of me wanted to give in, to roll up my sleeves and spend the next week fixing their problems. The father in me wanted to protect him from hardship, from failure, from the cold reality of adult responsibilities. But another part, the part that remembered the text message, the dismissive way they'd push me out, the casual cruelty of treating me like a tenant in my own home, that part stood firm. "No," I said finally. "I can't or won't." Melissa's voice was sharp. "Both," I replied. "I'm 72 years old with arthritis. I physically can't spend days repairing flood damage. And I won't enable you to continue treating me like a resource rather than a father." David's expression changed then. Something flickered across his face. Realization, perhaps, or the first glimmer of understanding. "So what are we supposed to do?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "What everyone does," I said. "Call professionals, pay them, learn from them, so maybe you can handle it yourself next time. That's how life works." I moved toward the door, suddenly eager to leave this house that no longer felt like mine. "The restoration company will help with the water," I added. "But check those photo albums. Some might be salvageable if you freeze them immediately." David nodded. A reflex rather than understanding. "I'll see myself out," I said. As I reached for the door, I heard Melissa's voice. Quiet but clear. "This isn't over, Harold." I turned back. "What do you mean?" Her eyes met mine, calculating. "The house. There are legal considerations. David has been living here for years, contributing to improvements. That creates certain rights." There it was. The threat that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. "Are you threatening legal action against me?" I asked, echoing my question from that night at the kitchen table. "Not threatening," she said smoothly. "Just stating facts. We've invested in this property. We have equity." I looked at David, waiting for him to contradict her, to show some loyalty to his father over this woman he barely knew. He said nothing, just stared at the floor. "Well," I said, feeling suddenly very tired, "you know where to find me if you want to serve papers." I opened the door and stepped out into the afternoon sunshine. Behind me, I heard David call my name, but I didn't turn back. The taxi I'd called was waiting at the curb. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house, at Margaret's neglected roses, at the lawn we'd once spent Sunday afternoons mowing together, at the porch swing where we'd watched summer storms roll in. It wasn't my home anymore. Perhaps it hadn't been for a long time. Back at Sunshine Villa, I sat on my small patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "The restoration company says it will cost $9,300. We don't have that kind of money." I set the phone down without replying. The weight of sadness pressed against my chest, not for myself but for my son, for the man who'd never learned that some things, like homes and fathers, need to be cared for before they're needed. 3 days later, a manila envelope arrived at my apartment. Official-looking papers with legal letterhead. I didn't need to open it to know what it contained. David and Melissa were making good on their threat. They were suing me for partial ownership of the house, my house, based on David's years of residency and their substantial improvements to the property. I sat heavily in my armchair, the unopened envelope in my trembling hands. After everything, after raising him alone, after putting him through college, after welcoming him back home, after tolerating the gradual takeover of my living space, it had come to this. My own son taking me to court. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not just the lawsuit, but what it represented. The final confirmation that in David's eyes, I wasn't a father to be loved and respected. I was an obstacle to be overcome, a resource to be extracted. A problem to be solved. I called Richard immediately. "They're suing me," I said when he answered. "My own son is suing me for my house." Richard's sigh carried through the phone. "I was afraid something like this might happen. Bring the papers to my office tomorrow. We'll go over them together." That night, alone in my small apartment, I took out the photo of Margaret I kept by my bedside. Her smile, forever frozen in time, seemed sadder now, knowing what had become of our family. What did we do wrong? I whispered to her image. Where did we go wrong with him? The photo offered no answers, just Margaret's kind eyes looking back at me across the years. I placed it back on the nightstand and tried to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. All I could see was David's face, not as the entitled adult who'd tried to charge me rent, but as the little boy who'd once looked at me like I hung the moon and stars. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost that boy. And now it seemed I'd lost my son as well. The next morning, my phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. I answered, expecting more demands, more entitlement, more betrayal. Instead, his voice cracked as he said 5 words I never thought I'd hear. "Dad, I think I need help. Dad, I think I need help." 5 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about where things stood between us. 5 words that cracked open a door I'd assumed was permanently closed. What kind of help? I asked cautiously, afraid to hope. David's voice sounded strange, congested like he'd been crying. "Can you come over, please? I need to talk to you in person." Part of me wanted to refuse. The lawsuit, the demands, the rent text, they were all still fresh wounds. But something in his voice pulled at the part of me that would always be a father first. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. The taxi dropped me at the curb again, but this time David was already waiting outside, alone, no Melissa in sight. He looked worse than before, unshaven, hair unwashed, wearing clothes that looked slept in. "Thanks for coming," he said, and the gratitude seemed genuine. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The flood damage had been partially addressed, industrial fans hummed in the basement, and the carpet had been torn up, but the place had a neglected feel that hadn't been there before. "Where's Melissa?" I asked, noticing her absence. "She's gone," David said flatly. "Left 3 days ago." I sat down slowly on the couch, waiting for him to continue. After we sent the legal papers, he began, running his hands through his greasy hair, we had a huge fight. I never wanted to sue you, Dad. It was her idea, but you went along with it, I pointed out. He nodded miserably. I did, and I'm sorry. More sorry than you can imagine. What happened with Melissa? David laughed, a hollow sound with no humor in it. Turns out she was only interested in the house. When the basement flooded and you wouldn't bail us out, she started talking about cutting our losses. Said maybe we should sell the place as is and use the money for a down payment on something in Riverside Heights. Riverside Heights, the expensive neighborhood where her parents lived. The place she'd always talked about moving to. I told her I couldn't sell my childhood home, David continued. That it meant something to me even with all the problems. She said I was being sentimental and impractical. He paused, swallowing hard. Then I found some texts on her phone. She's been talking to a real estate agent for months. Had the house appraised behind my back. Was planning to convince me to sell as soon as we got the deed in our names. The pieces clicked into place. The lawsuit, the rush to get me out, the constant pressure to formalize things, it had all been leading to this. Not a home for David and Melissa, but a quick profit and a stepping stone to something better. I confronted her, David said. It got ugly. She said she'd never planned to live in this dump long term, that it was just an investment opportunity, that I was an idiot for not seeing it. My heart ached for him, despite everything. No parent wants to see their child manipulated, used. She packed her things and left. Said she'd have her lawyer contact me about the wedding, that I could keep the worthless house with its worthless memories. A heavy silence fell between us. I looked around at what remained of the home Margaret and I had built. Walls that needed paint, floors that needed refinishing, a house that needed love, not speculation. The lawsuit? I finally asked. I called and stopped it, David said. The papers were never officially filed. It was just a threat, a pressure tactic. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by wariness. Was this another manipulation? Another attempt to get me to open my wallet? Why did you call me, David? He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. 2 reasons. First, to apologize. I've been terrible to you. Selfish, entitled, ungrateful. I forgot everything you taught me about respect and responsibility. About family. I nodded, acknowledging his words, but not yet ready to forgive. And second, I prompted, I need advice, he said simply. Not money, not labor, just advice. I don't know what to do. The restoration company did the emergency work, but the rest of the repairs, he shrugged helplessly. I'm drowning in bills. The wedding deposits are lost. And I don't know the first thing about fixing this place up. For the first time in years, maybe decades, my son was looking at me not as a resource to be tapped, but as a father with wisdom to share. The shift was so profound, it left me speechless. I understand if you don't want to help, he added quickly. I wouldn't blame you, but you're the only person I trust right now. Trust. The word hung between us like a fragile bridge. I thought about walking away, about letting him face the consequences of his choices alone. It would be justified after everything that had happened, but I also thought about Margaret, about the promises we'd made to each other about our son, about the kind of father I'd always tried to be, even when it was difficult. Especially when it was difficult. Let's look at the basement, I said finally. Relief washed over David's face. Thank you. The next 2 hours were spent assessing damage, making lists and creating a plan of attack. The water was gone, but the mold remediation would be expensive. Some of the support beams needed treatment. The damaged items, Margaret's Christmas ornaments, family photos, David's childhood memorabilia, were piled in sad, soggy heaps. Most of it's ruined, David said, his voice breaking as he picked up a waterlogged photo album. Not everything, I said, gently taking it from him. Photos can sometimes be saved if you know how. Your mother taught me a few tricks after that pipe burst in '98. We worked side by side, carefully separating stuck pages, laying out salvageable photos to dry. It was slow, meticulous work. The kind of patient care that Margaret had always excelled at. I remember when these were taken, David said softly, pointing to a series of beach photos. Cape Cod, summer of '96. Mom got sunburned so bad she couldn't wear a shirt for 3 days. She made me buy her that ridiculous straw hat from that tourist trap," I added, the memory warming me. "Cost $30 and fell apart before we got home." David smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. She loved that stupid hat. For the first time in years, we were sharing memories instead of demands. Connecting over something genuine instead of financial obligations. It felt right. As the afternoon wore on, we moved from practical tasks to harder conversations. Sitting at the kitchen table with coffee cups between us, David opened up about Melissa, about how she'd gradually changed once they got engaged, how she'd pushed him to ask for more from me, to treat the house as an asset rather than a home. She made it sound so reasonable, he said. Like I was entitled to part of the house because I was your son. Like charging you rent was just formalizing what everyone else did. Did you believe her? I asked. He hesitated. I wanted to. It made me feel less guilty about taking advantage of you. If it was normal, if it was what everyone did, then I wasn't being a bad son. His honesty cut deep, but it was also healing. Finally, the truth instead of excuses. The worst part, he continued, is that I knew it was wrong. Every time I asked for money, every time we pushed you out of another room, every time we made decisions about your house without asking, I knew it was wrong. But it was easier to go along with it than to stand up to her. Why? I asked. Why was it so hard to say no to her? David stared into his coffee cup. Because I was afraid she'd leave. That I wasn't enough on my own. There it was. The insecurity that had driven all of this. My son, afraid of being alone, willing to compromise his values to keep someone who didn't truly love him. After your mom died, I said carefully, I worried that I wasn't enough for you, that you needed a mother figure, a complete family. I pushed you too hard sometimes, trying to compensate. You were enough, Dad, David said quietly. You were always enough. Those words, simple as they were, healed something in me that had been broken for a long time. We talked until evening fell, clearing away years of misunderstandings and unspoken resentments. Not everything was resolved. Some wounds were too deep for a single conversation, but it was a start, a foundation we could build on. As I prepared to leave, David walked me to the door. What happens now? He asked. I considered the question carefully. That depends on you. What do you want to happen? I want to fix this place up, he said without hesitation. Make it a home again, not just an investment property. And I want to fix things between us if that's possible. It won't be easy, I warned him. The house needs a lot of work. So does our relationship. I know, he nodded. But I'm willing to put in the effort if you are. I thought about Sunshine Villa, about my small apartment with its peaceful garden, about the independence I'd found there. I'm not moving back, I said firmly. I need my own space now. I understand, he said, and I believed he did. But I'll help you with the repairs. Teach you what you need to know. On one condition. What's that? You do the work yourself. No contractors except for the specialized stuff. You'd learn how to take care of this place the way your mother and I did. He nodded, determination replacing the defeat I'd seen earlier. Deal. Over the next few months, a new routine emerged. 3 days a week, I'd take the bus to the house. David would pick me up at the stop, and we'd spend the day working on repairs. Refinishing hardwood floors. Patching drywall, rewiring the basement outlets. All the skills I'd tried to teach him years ago, now being eagerly absorbed. He took a second job to pay for materials, working weekends at the hardware store. The wedding money he'd saved went toward the mortgage payments. No more takeout dinners, no more fancy clothes. Just honest work and careful budgeting. The house slowly transformed back into the warm, welcoming place it had once been. Not with expensive upgrades and trendy fixtures, but with careful maintenance and thoughtful repairs. We hung pictures of Margaret in places of honor, set up her china cabinet again, planted new roses to replace the neglected ones on a chilly October morning. 6 months after our reconciliation began, I arrived to find David waiting with a surprise. I found these in the attic, he said, handing me a dusty box. They were in a waterproof container, so the flood didn't get them. Inside were Christmas ornaments. Not Margaret's hand-painted ones. Those were lost forever. but the ones she'd inherited from her mother. Crystal snowflakes and delicate glass birds that had adorned our first Christmas tree together. I thought they were gone, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She must have stored them separately, David replied. For safekeeping. Just like Margaret, to think ahead, to preserve what was precious. That December we decorated a Christmas tree together for the first time in years. David came to Sunshine Villa on Christmas Eve for dinner, bringing a small gift, a handmade birdhouse he'd crafted in the workshop we'd set up in the garage. For your garden, he explained. I know how much you enjoy watching the birds. The care he'd put into it, the attention to detail, reminded me so much of the boy he'd been before grief and entitlement had changed him. In January, Richard called with news about the lawsuit. Melissa's making noise again, he told me, claiming she's entitled to compensation for investments in the property. Let her try, I said, no longer fearful. We have documentation for everything. And something else, Richard added. David came to see me last week. He asked me to draw up papers putting the house in both your names, with a stipulation that it can't be sold without mutual agreement. I was speechless. He's protecting the house, Richard explained, making sure no future spouse or partner can pressure him to sell it. Smart move, actually. Smart indeed. My son had learned his lesson well. When I asked David about it, he shrugged like it was nothing. It's our family home, he said simply. It should stay that way. Spring came, bringing new growth to the garden and new developments in our lives. David started dating again, a quiet kindergarten teacher named Julie who loved the house for what it was, not what it could be worth. I joined a veterans writing group at the senior center, sharing stories about my time in the service that I'd never told anyone. One warm May evening, we sat on the front porch swing, enjoying the evening breeze and watching the neighborhood children play across the street. It reminded me of similar evenings with Margaret, when David was young and the future stretched endlessly ahead of us. I've been thinking about Mom a lot lately, David said, breaking our comfortable silence. About what she'd think of everything that's happened. She'd be proud of you, I said honestly. Not for the mistakes, but for how you've worked to fix them. And you, are you proud of me? The question held all the vulnerability of the little boy who used to seek my approval for everything from crayon drawings to science fair projects. I am, I said. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, to rebuild what's been damaged. Not everyone can do that, he nodded, accepting the praise without deflecting it. You know what I've learned through all this? He said after a moment. What's that? That a house isn't just a building. It's not just an asset or an investment. It's the physical manifestation of a family story. Every scratch on the doorframe marking my height. Every dent in the wall from moving furniture. Every carefully chosen paint color. They're all chapters in our history. I smiled, recognizing Margaret's influence in his words. She'd always said something similar. Your mother used to call it the autobiography we live in, I told him. She believed homes should tell the story of the people who lived there. She was right, David said. Melissa never understood that. To her, it was just another transaction. Some people never learn the difference between price and value, I said. Between what something costs and what it's worth. We fell silent again, watching the last light fade from the sky. Not an awkward silence, but the comfortable quiet of two people at peace with each other and themselves. Later, as I waited for the taxi to take me back to Sunshine Villa, David brought out a small package. I found this when we were cleaning out the attic last week, he said. I think Mom would want you to have it. Inside was Margaret's journal from the year before she died. I recognized her handwriting immediately. Neat, precise, slightly slanted to the right. The inscription on the first page read, "For my beloved Harold, who built more than just a house for us, who built a home." That night, in my quiet apartment, I read her words by lamplight. Her hopes for David's future, her concerns about leaving us, her deep love for the family we'd created together. And on the last page, a final message that made me weep. Remember, my love, that houses can be bought and sold, but homes exist in the heart. They can never be taken away unless we forget what truly matters. The next morning I called David. I've been thinking, I said. About your mother's journal. About what she wrote about homes existing in the heart. What about it? She was right. But I think she'd also say that the physical places where we build our lives matter too. That the walls that hold our memories deserve our care and respect. I think so too, David said. That's why I'm working so hard on this place. I know, I said, and I'm proud of you for that. We continued our renovation project throughout that year and the next. The house bloomed under our attention, not with flashy upgrades, but with the careful maintenance that only comes from genuine love and respect. David and Julie got engaged that winter. A small, sensible ring, a long engagement planned. No rush to the altar, just the steady building of a relationship based on mutual respect. We're thinking about a simple ceremony in the backyard, David told me. If that's okay with you, it's your home too, I reminded him. Your name's on the deed, but it will always be your house first, Dad, he said. You and Mom built it, not just with money, but with love. I never want to forget that again. I never moved back to the house. My apartment at Sunshine Villa became home in its own way. I made friends there, found new interests, created a life that was wholly my own. But I visited often, helping with projects, sharing meals, building new memories alongside the old. The lesson I learned through all of this wasn't about property rights or financial obligations. It was about the true meaning of family, about how relationships like houses require constant maintenance. How neglect leads to decay, but careful attention brings renewal. David learned that a home is more than a financial asset. It's the physical space where love lives. And I learned that sometimes letting go is necessary before someone can truly appreciate what they've been given. That text message, $500 due first of month, Venmo preferred, hangs in a small frame in my apartment now. Not as a reminder of betrayal, but as evidence of how far we've come, of the painful lessons that led to genuine growth. Margaret would be proud of us both. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Your feedback helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for listening.